From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, where legendary former captain Charlotte Edwards is settling into her new role as England women's head coach. I think I said on Stumped back in February that she'd be the outstanding candidate in my eyes with the success that she's had in tournaments around the world and franchises. But eyebrows have been raised at the fact that the role was never advertised after the ECB pledged a few years ago to have open recruitment processes. I know a couple of coaches who would have liked the opportunity to show their interest, even if the outcome was the same. So an excellent appointment, but poor process.
We loved Lottie in the West. I'm Clint Wheeldon for the ABC, filling in for Jim Maxwell. The summer schedule, although we're in the middle of footy season, was announced this week here in Australia, including, of course, the Ashes, which will be a high point. But South Africa and India's men's teams are both touring, and there's T20 internationals taking place in Darwin and Cairns, one days in Cairns and Mackay. There's going to be 11 cities to see international cricket in Australia this summer, and it all wraps up with the Indian women at the Wacker in March for a test match, and that will be a personal highlight.
Hi, and I'm Sunil Gupta for Akashvani in New Delhi. And obviously the IPL is heating up. We've seen the three teams that haven't won so far right on top of the table, RCB and Punjab Kings and the Delhi Capitals. But you know what happens in the IPL. You can win all your games and go on and lose the last one, as they did in the WPL. And the big second topic of discussion here in India is, or is he not, Rohit Sharma, joining the Indian tour to England in June and July. We shall see, we shall wait, and we shall wonder as it carries on in India.
Good to have you with us, Sunil, and you too as well, Clint. Coming up this week, we'll be celebrating South Australia winning the Sheffield Shield for the first time in 29 years with one of their star players, Jake Lehmann. But first, how to fix what's been termed the broken global structure of world cricket. The Global Players Union, the World Cricketers Association, are calling for action to change what they see as the sport's chaotic schedule, outdated regulations, and lack of global leadership. They've spent the last 6 months speaking to 64 stakeholders, including current and ex-players, administrators and journalists, and they've made key recommendations that they believe would, amongst other things, ensure international cricket and domestic T20 leagues can work together successfully for the betterment of all nations. Their suggestions include an easier-to-follow global calendar with protected windows for what's termed core international cricket, and establishing a global development fund to spread finances more widely and to grow the game. I've been speaking to the Chief Executive of the World Cricketers Association, Tom Moffat, who explains more about the report.
The report's quite a lengthy report that looks at a number of different issues. Economics and the numbers are one part of it, but obviously there's a lot that goes into it. India contributes an enormous amount to cricket, and that value is and should obviously be recognised. That's a really clear point to highlight up front. They've revolutionised the game with the IPL, and that's clearly probably the biggest call out in the whole sport over the last 10 or 15 years. At the end of the day, the eyeballs in India are watching and paying for a global product. When we talk about international cricket, that involves other countries, and even with the leagues and the IPL, it involves players from other countries as well. So look, broadcasters and others have highlighted with us that depth and competitiveness is really critical to having a good commercial product to sell for international cricket. So really what a lot of the recommendations go to is that if cricket wants to grow and it wants to have competitive international cricket beyond just a couple of countries, a handful of countries, currently the only lever the sport has to achieve that and to achieve some more competitive balance is the distribution of revenue. You can't have drafts and auctions in international cricket. It's the one way that you can help to ensure that more countries can have an ability to invest in the sport. So some of the recommendations talk to that, but it's certainly by no means an anti-India recommendation. We know they contribute a significant amount to the sport. It's really taking a global lens and a growth-based lens to a lot of the issues.
Is that going to be your biggest challenge, do you think, bringing India with you? The report talks about the Global Growth and Development Fund to potentially follow the UEFA model, where the top 24 countries get 10% on a sliding scale down to 2% of global revenue. But the report is also quite good at highlighting, over the long term, what that difference would be in revenue overall to countries. And if all of the recommendations are followed, it shows that India might end up with, say, 3% less revenue overall. The rest of the world would increase, and you're quite good at laying out what all the benefits are. Is that going to be your biggest challenge, do you think?
Yeah, look, and really what we're looking to do here, Ali, is to spark some debate. We know that this is complex, and we want the game to debate these issues and some of the solutions we've put forward meaningfully. I think when problems have tried to be solved previously in our sport, there's probably been a tendency to tinker with one part or another. We think there are some holistic things that need to be changed, and the report talks to that. So the package of, if you want to call them reforms that we've proposed, we think would add significant value for everyone. We think it would make the game clearer and easier to follow, whether you're a fan or a player or a commercial stakeholder. And critically also, because we know it drives a lot of the decisions, we think it would add value to the sport.
And what do you foresee happening if the game doesn't make any of these changes?
I think international cricket in particular is at real risk in a lot of parts of the world, in particular beyond the biggest three countries. And the opportunities that the leagues are presenting for players and for the sport generally are fantastic. But the reality is, in a system with no rules, basically as to how cricket's scheduled, and some big inequity in terms of how revenue is shared, that's left the international game exposed in a lot of countries and a lot of parts of the world. And I think where I started up front is that the people who lose the most out of that are probably the national governing bodies in all of those countries as well. So there's a real risk of that, and what we're trying to do here is propose some proactive solutions to address that before something falls off a cliff.
And do you have confidence that some of these things will come into effect?
I think there will be a tipping point, Ali, for a lot of the things that we've proposed in the report and we talk to in the report. I don't think it's sustainable for a global sport to not sort out its calendar and to not have a regulated calendar. And as I said, we want to make sure that conversation should be happening proactively by our games leadership, and we're really encouraging that debate to happen now before there is a more pressing catalyst for that to happen.
Well, that was the Chief Executive of the World Cricket Association, Tom Moffat. So an aligned global calendar, Test, ODI and T20 leagues with promotion and relegation are part of that report, more equitable revenue share, including the pooling of broadcast rights, global regulations around player movements, and reform of the ICC. Do you think much or any of this is feasible?
The first thing is that, you have to carry India with you, not just because India is the biggest contributor to revenues and eyeballs and fame, if it comes to that as well. It also, you have Jay Shah as the president of the ICC, and of course, you've got the BCCI. So there are a lot of sort of wheels within wheels in this particular one. So let's break it up, in my mind, into two things. One is calendar and the other is revenue. Right? Calendar, I don't think anybody really is going to crib too much about having a calendar that's much more organized, gives everybody a chance to play both representative cricket as well as franchise cricket, because you don't want players, high caliber players, to have to choose between one or the two or the other. So I think that has a definite chance of staying alive if it is presented properly and the calendar actually works. I think those smaller windows for the premier ICC tournaments that you build up to, all the qualifiers and so on and so forth, including the World Test Championship, I think all those things are feasible and required, because at the end of the day, nobody can quibble about the fact that the game needs to internationalize. So I think there are lots of things that are good about this report. But yes, the question of revenue and whether it can be audited and how it's being handed out, those are ticklish issues. They will have to be tackled. And I think everybody will understand, including the ICC, that you do want to spread the wings of cricket, beyond the top three or beyond the top five. Right now, for instance, the World Test Championship final has been played only in England, even though England has not been one of the contenders, right? We had India a couple of times. And in fact, I read this report somewhere, Ali and Clint, that because India is not playing this particular final, Lord's seems to be on the verge of losing quite a lot of money in terms of spectators. I
Ticket
don't know
prices
whether
dropped
that's true.
immediately that South Africa made the final.
Well, there you are. There you are. Absolutely. So I'm saying that is the power that India wields. Now, you cannot get away from that. You have to put that into the mix, whatever mix you're trying to come up with.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on Akashvani.
Well, next on Stumped, there were wild celebrations and a party which might still be going on in Adelaide as South Australia won their first Sheffield Shield title in 29 years.
Callum Vidler has the ball for Queensland. Jason Sanger on strike on 125. Right over the wicket. Sanger plays it into the leg side and gets the winning runs. South Australia break their 29 years drought.
That's given me goosebumps. ABC's Aaron Bryan's there with the commentary. Now, it was in fact 10,588 days since they last got their hands on the Sheffield Shield with a team that included the likes of Jason Gillespie and Darren Lehmann. Well, fast forward to 2025 and it's Lehmann's son Jake who was integral in the win because he scored a century to help South Australia beat Queensland by those 4 wickets. And Jake joins us now. Hi Jake, how are you?
Yeah, thanks for having us. That was awesome audio to listen to then. I haven't actually heard that from the ABC, so that was awesome.
Well, we'll talk about the history with your dad in a bit. But I mean, how was that final as an occasion? The emotions you went through as the match unfolded and, of course, that climax with the crowd flooding on.
Yeah, I think, looking back on it now, I feel like the move from probably Adelaide Oval to Canberra over to a smaller ground felt probably a little bit more enclosed with everyone in there and probably gave the option for all the crowd to run on. So to actually see that and be there and just see the joy on so many people's faces and, it's been a long time for South Australia to have that success. So, it was just amazing and probably the ground swap benefited all that came after it.
Yeah, we'll just fill people in. It was a little bit controversial that the game couldn't go ahead at Adelaide Oval because it's the football season and the AFL wouldn't allow the cricket match to be played, so it had to be played on the smaller ground. But, I mean, when that crowd flooded on at the end, what was that like for all of you? I mean, yeah, the 2 batters were in the middle, I suppose, but, I mean, modern-day players are not used to crowd invasions.
Yeah, it's been funny. They kind of showed the highlights a fair bit on social media and on the news and stuff throughout the week, and there was talk about it. But you just probably don't expect it this day and age, like you said, for it to actually happen. And that last probably 5-6 runs, you could see people kind of gathering towards the fence, and a few of the kids and people had their legs on the ground and ready to go, and the security guards are up, and then it just happened. And to watch Ben and Jason get absolutely mauled. I think Ben was covered in beer and water and everything as he came off. And basically, he basically said, I couldn't really see where I was going and didn't really know what to do. And the security guards kind of ushered him back up into the ground. Michael Nessa grabbed Sanger's bat because he dropped it and someone tried to grab his bat. So, yeah, it was just chaos in all instances.
I feel like we shouldn't condone that type of behaviour, but in this instance, we're going to let it go. I mean, it was because 29 years ago, all the fans ran onto the field to celebrate with the players. So that was why the crowd wanted to recreate that exact moment. And then, of course, you had a celebration, didn't you, in the city, in Rundle Mall with the Premier and the squad up on stage with the public again. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was actually really cool as well. I think the Premier and that have been a massive supporter of sport in general in South Australia, and he really respects what I guess sport does for us as a state, and to gather all the fans, all our families, all the SACA members and support staff behind the scenes, like to just have that little moment a couple of days later to enjoy it with all of them was phenomenal.
Jake, there's a famous photo from back in 1996 when SA beat or have a draw with WA but win the Shield because of it. You sitting on your father's knee, him posing with the trophy. Did you ever think that you would get a chance to pose yourself with that trophy, and have you reflected on that photo over the last couple of days?
Yeah, I've seen it, I guess, a fair bit, and probably don't remember it too much, only being 3. But, I always thought throughout my career that we've been building a couple of times to this moment and just missed out in the past. And, it probably makes it a little bit more special now that, Funnily enough, I do have a daughter, Roxy, who was 3, and she was loving it, and every day she kept saying, "Oh, is it medal day yet? Is it medal day yet?" And it looked pretty good after the first couple of days, but after day 3, I was like, "Oh no, maybe we've jumped the gun a little bit early here." But that last day with Kez and Sang, they were just phenomenal.
Just on your dad, both Ali and myself were lucky enough to work with him on the ABC across the summer. How much of an influence has your father been on your career? And is it tough when you have had a dad who has been as successful as Darren has been to sort of step out of his shadow?
I probably acknowledged it early in terms of stepping out of the shadow and try to put it out that if I was half as good as him, I'm going to have a pretty good career. And it's probably looking a little bit like that. And along the way, I've got some small milestones that he doesn't have, which is a Shield final 100, which is nice.
You told him about that,
yeah.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, he's actually been phenomenal. He's probably let me grow up and be the person that I want to be, and probably just let me fall in love with the game and sport in general, and just supported and backed me, and whether it was even AFL footy, cricket. Just it's probably the benefit of having the small insights of someone that's done it for a long period of time. And, if things aren't going well, he can help me talk through that and situations, and backing myself in and my process and realizing my strengths. So, yeah, it's obviously definitely an advantage. But the one thing I give him massive credit for is letting me be the person that I wanted to be.
Jake, congratulations on the Shield wins. Great to see you smiling so much and really enjoying it, and so you should do. Thanks for being with us on Stumped.
Thanks for having us.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped for Akash Varney. Don't forget you can follow us on X. We're at BBCWS Sport and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And check us out on YouTube as well by going to the BBC World Service on YouTube. My thanks to Sunil, Gupta, Clint, Wheeldon, and to all of you. We'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC Sport production for the BBC World Service in association with ABC and Akash Varney.